Aslema Labese. Hello, and how are you doing? I said in Tunisian Arabic in order to honor this wonderful language. And the people who speak it, by the way, also. What do we gain when analyzing social change by way of thinking in terms of emerging and inherited cultural patterns reference? Where does the dynamic impulse of societal change come from? Well, very old question. The economic sphere, as Marxists and neoliberals converge in preaching, the communal sphere in form of changes in structuring social inequalities, the political sphere as changes in the institutional context of governance structures, or does it come from the cultural sphere, manifested as pressure arising from values and normative expectations, the institutionalization of procedural reforms, or revolutionary breaks in the cultural coding of traditions, cultural patterns? We are convinced that the role of law is underestimated as bearer, medium, and symbolic expression of fundamental changes in societies. Be they changes along the lines claimed by revolutionary semantics or a process of smoother changes that we call transition. We are proud to have organized the first conference reflecting what was formerly called Arab Spring in the early days of 2011, at least the first conference of this kind in Germany. A fever ran through our veins of hope and fear that such breathtaking political change of a dictatorship in Tunisia on the one hand and the revolutionary events from Tahrir Square might change the world by teaching it that against all kind of prejudice, democracy and Islam might be compatible. That perhaps even the world could learn from this region, because the new slogan of liberty, justice and dignity could equally capture the hearts and minds of disenchanted people in the West. Disenchanted from communism after the fall of the Iron Curtain, and disenchanted too from attempting to heal the world through radical market economics. None of these dreams came true. Tunisia is now in the precarious phase of seeking reconciliation between two camps that seem to split Tunisian society more and more into religiously oriented and secularist camps. We will talk about that. The comeback of military power in Egypt is no less irritating, and the transformation of the politically leading Muslim Brotherhood into the enemy of the state may not hinder fantasies or prophecies that this might one day change in the opposite direction. However, there is no doubt that, with the exception of important minorities in both states, Islamic traditions form the basic codes of both societies. Those traditions penetrate into the normative realm, manners, customs, morals, and the law. This subjacent, or one could say perhaps magma of society, seemed to be freed after the upheavals, bringing Ennahda into power in Tunisia. Even though Islamic claims were far removed from the concerns of civil society's protest against unjust dictatorial state power, they joined the revolutionary climate as a kind of free rider, and in Egypt both brought brotherhood to those who did not want to feel like brothers. Law has been involved in these processes of revolutionary excitement and lethargic aftermath. Tunisia had reached a high level of secular legal culture, with some religious spots by way of a revolutionary family law that broke with nearly all traits of a typical Islamic legal culture, like polygamy, marriage age, inheritance, public wearing of veils, etc. But where are we now? Amel Grami studied Arabic language, literature and history at the University of Tunis, where she received her PhD with a thesis on apostasy in Islamic thought. in 1993. In 2004, she obtained her doctorate d'État with the treatise on difference in Islamic culture. I could not read it until now, but I absolutely have to do that. From the University of Manouba. It is written in Arabic, I suppose, and I have a little bit to work on it. Since 1993, Amel Grami has been researching and teaching at the Faculty of Arts and Humanities of the University of Manouba, where she became professor for Arabic studies in 2005. Professor Grami is one of the world's leading experts on the intersect between comparative religious studies and gender studies, with a special focus on Maghreb societies. For many years, she has been dealing with issues related to the dialogue between religions and cultures, the institutional context being very interesting to that. Her special fields of interest include reform movement in the Middle East and Tunisia, and Amel Grami has also been a widely visible and vocal intellectual supporter of women's rights in the Islamic world in public discourse and the media. That's why, by the way, the unfortunately not present Elisabeth Kassab last week presented her as one example of a female intellectual in this area. Since May 2014, Amel Grami, you are a fellow at the Käte Hamburger Center for Advanced Study in the Humanities, Law as Culture, as for the moment the climate of your international career, if I may say.
Thank you, Professor, for this introduction, and hello, everybody. First of all, I would like to express my gratitude to the Professor Werner and also to thank Dr. Raja Sakrani. Many thanks also for all the staff. They are very kind and helpful. This is our constitution, finally, after 3 years. And after many years of working on more than front, teaching at the same time, sharing my experiences and knowledge with women's association, minorities groups, some political parties, and human rights foundation association, in Tunisia, in Libya, in Morocco, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, Sudan, Mauritania, and many other countries, providing some democratic deputies inside the Constituent Assembly, some arguments and information how to deal with Islamists inside the Constituent Assembly. I realized that it is time to evaluate what I had achieved and the cost of this commitment. Ended long working hours, the sacrifice of my personal life to be targeted by both extremists sending me threat of death and the intimidation of the political circles who perceive my voice as a threat. Psychological balance becoming more and more weak by fear, violence, humiliation, insult, frustration, and anxiety. For me, defending social justice, equality, dignity, it's a question of survival, and in challenging male rules, it's not a simple task in our society. Fear is supposed to drive public intellectual women, as Najma Badi said, away from critical thinking and writing, or stress render them unable to produce any creation. Arab and Muslim women activists need not only to have their lives saved, but also opportunities to create and write. Virginia Woolf claims that if women want to be great writers, they will need an income of £500 a year and a space all of their own in which to write. They will be born. Bearing in mind what Hélène Cixous said, you must write yourself, your body must be heard. I decided to take this opportunity and to come to this college. This invitation, in fact, liberated me from everyday obligation, writing in newspaper, participating at demonstrations, attending conferences, giving interviews, contributing to debate on talk show, etc. Admiring the river from my window, my body started to write about its own new birth. Again and again, Professor Werner, thank you for offering me this marvelous space to create. This presentation is part of a large project I'm currently working on, and it is a pleasure for me to share with you some ideas about this work. So, the debate on law, religion, and gender in post-revolution Tunisia, emerging and inherited culture patterns. First of all, I would like to share with you some historical background. It's not our first constitution, but we have the first fundamental pact on 1857. This was followed by the Constitution of 1861, which is very important to note here that it was the first written constitution in Arab world. And in this constitution, we mention that it is not necessary for a ruler to be Muslim. And this constitution was replaced by the Constitution of 1959. It was adopted on 1 June 1559 and amended in many years. On 23 October 2011, the Constituent Assembly was elected to draft a new constitution. All the political leaders agreed that it will take only 1 year, but they failed to their promise. And the process of making this new constitution took more than 2 years. Let's have an idea about this Constituent Assembly, and you realize that we have more than 2017 seats, and this is the political groups participating in this Constituent Assembly. And in blue, you can imagine the importance of Islamic Party in Nahda, and we have another bloc called Democratic. And of course, we have independent. The first constitution after our independence, women were not allowed to participate in this drafting process. But in 2011, and thanks to this revolution, women won 24% of the seats. And we should note also that 42 of those seats were won by Nahda Party, female deputies. Members are from different regions, ideologies, subculture, and classes, profession. They were involved in a unique opportunity to draft Tunisian constitution. And when we compare this member with the member who wrote the first constitution, we can easily understand that the first constitution was written by the elite, educated, well-educated person, and who have these skills or expertise on law. But those of this Constituent Assembly are from different level of knowledge. This Constituent Assembly, for me, it's like a stage performance. And performers are all the time showing their expertise and even their emotion, their behavior, their attitude. And from the perspective, or let's say from this window of theater, literature, I'm trying to analyze the debate inside the Constituent Assembly. And here we have moment of great emotion when we finally finish the first photo, when we finish the drafting process, and then the next photo also. We have in this third photo confrontation between some deputies, and not only male but also female and male, etc., and which is very interesting to see this interaction between many deputies inside the Constituent Assembly. I will stress another remark here. The code of dressing of female belonging to Ennahda party. We were very interested on analyzing this, let's say, code of dressing, because we were, for the first moment, shocked, because until now we have this liberty or freedom to choose many style of wearing the hijab, the veil. But we remarked that female from Ennahda party have instruction from their party to wear the same style in order to be recognized, well recognized, and as a block they formed a sign of belonging to one party. And at the same time, they are more visible than other deputies belonging to democratic or, let's say, liberal parties. And when we look at those deputies, of course, they were more identifiable through their appropriate clothing style. And Kidi calls that an Islamic package of ideology or a markers of differences. From the beginning, they tried to distinguish themselves from the other. And we started to hear we, the majoritarian, we, the representative of the people, the will of the people, and you are the minority, you are not visible, and even non-respect by the society. And which is very important to note here is the media, how some journalists deals with deputies inside Constituent Assembly. And it is very interesting to see the comportment or the behavior or the attitude of some deputies. And there is a focus on the behavior of women belonging to Ennahda, which is not fair, in fact. I'm working on these photos because I'm trying to analyze from the perspective or the approach of emotion, law, and politics. We can understand what is the role of emotion in mobilizing some deputies, and even in this show inside the Constituent Assembly. For example, and thanks to media, because it is for the first time that media was allowed to translate this debate inside the Constituent Assembly, and thanks to that, we can, as Tunisians, know what's happening inside the Constituent Assembly. And the role of multiple deputies, most of them are not attending the debate. We have a poor attendance from democratic parties, but on the contrary, the members from another party were well represented, and there is a discipline of presence and visibility inside the Constituent Assembly, which is strange for observers. And at the same time, for the first time, under the pressure of civil society and NGOs, which calls Bausala, was in this position of controlling what's happened inside the Constituent Assembly, and thanks to their website, we can collect many information. For example, salaries of deputies and their travels in European countries, and many things about their position, their votes, etc. And even the new phenomenon, which is what we call in Tunisia traveling of deputies. Deputies who decided to join another parties. So they were elected from one party to represent the interest of some categories, and suddenly they changed. And we started to discover the real reasons. There is money given to some deputies in order to change their loyalty to some parties. Inside this Constituent Assembly, we can see also power relation, how to construct the image of the self, and how to be more popular, more visible, and sometimes they create confrontation in order to be more famous or more popular, but they have a good relationship after this session of debate. So, inside this Constituent Assembly, we started to see the hegemony of the group, the majoritarian. First of all, they imposed their rules. And if we agree that language is power, so we can understand why the majoritarian deputies impose Arabic language. It was a war with two clans, or we have Francophone who express themselves in French, and we have some deputies coming from they are immigrant coming from European, American, etc. So they are unable to express themselves in Arabic, and we tolerated dialect, Tunisian dialect, but not a foreign language. This is the first rule. Second rule, religion expression. We should start our remarks or our intervention, etc., with references to God. And third remarks, to impose this expression of religion. For example, some deputies were were very surprised to see that we cut the debate until the member of another party go to pray. And we should wait until they come back in order to hold the session, etc. And there is a multiple form of imposing rules inside the Constituent Assembly. But how people perceive this Constituent Assembly, many critiques and humorists, and of course we have a lot of reaction, a funny reaction on Facebook, etc. And we have also satire. And here the president of the Constituent Assembly, and unfortunately we can't see the whole picture because he's taking a chicken in his hand, and what is mentioned there, it is this is your constitution, it's ready now, but when you look at the chicken, it's bird. So it's too late for people. And the next photo, we can say here it is the people and the Constituent Assembly, because they are all the time claiming for more and more salaries, higher salaries. In the other side, people are suffering from this hardest economic situation. And moment of great emotion when people go on demonstration in order to claim for the dissolution of Constituent Assembly, and it was a threat, an important threat for those deputies. And this photo after what happened in Egypt, and we can see the sign of Rabia. They support Al-Ikhwan al-Muslimin in Egypt, and they are against the military coup d'etat, etc. And since this moment, we started to hear many deputies defending Egypt inside the Constituent Assembly. We have finally this process of drafting the Constitution, and finally we have in 26 January the final draft, or let's say Constitution. The first idea that I was interested to go deeper and to see what is the understanding of people of law, perception of law. In pre-revolution Tunisia, the majority of Tunisians viewed the law were designed to ensure the domination of Ben Ali and his clan, politically and economically speaking. Law was used to legitimate Ben Ali power, in fact. People did not trust the whole system because it was corrupted. Many judges were appointed by Ben Ali, and even his wife and the Ministry of Justice. People were unable to defend their rights and were not interested at all to learn about this culture of law. Following the revolution and months of protest, law became at the heart of debates and action in the country. People claimed for a new constitution that reflects the revolution's values. They called for the rule of law and accountability. Law became at the heart of calls for reform. Drafting new constitution reflected this demand for a radical change. The major bloc, the party, perceived law as tool and instrument to achieve some partisan goals. First of all, which was very clear, we feel it every day, the Islamization of society by changing the style of life and the imposition of Islamic values and norms. Some conservative members aspire to establish an Islamic state, caliphate, and the application of Sharia law. The protection of the rights of people, particularly some groups such as the victim of Ben Ali regime, and effectively they started to give them their rights. Radical Islamists saw the alternative in a return to the Islamic principles and laws. The Sharia law is expected to reinforce social harmony of Muslims against external influences. This is the cultural expectation. Most of the representatives of the democratic bloc and the independent bloc stressed the need for a new constitution, which can be an important step toward the realization of democracy. It should also reflecting the rule of law, justice, equality, and the respect of our human rights and dignity. According to those members, law should be used to promote and protect the well-being of the collectivity. It should be an attempt to make the government accountable to international norms. The Tunisian transition was characterized by a heated debate between secular on one side and religious forces on the other side. The controversies have not been limited to the Constituent Assembly, but they have also taken place within society in the media, websites, Facebook, Twitter, TV, radio, etc. Second act, how law was represented in the media and understood. Benefiting from this new area of freedom of expression, of course, many TV and radio changed their programs. Through talk show, testimonies of victims of the former regime, debates, etc., Tunisians constructed an image about the Ben Ali regime, the work of judiciary, police forces, etc. Law meant not respect of law. Also, given the new social political context, the polarization between Islamists and secularists, successive waves of violence and the impunity extremists enjoyed helped radicalized groups who rejected the local laws and sought to establish their emirate in some towns. They started effectively the application of Sharia law in some towns, and we started for the first time in Tunisia to hear that someone who has lost his legs or his hand because some troops of extremists took him and applied the Sharia. And here are some programs very famous in Tunisia, and this program, the first one is How Are You? It calls How Are You? And the second one is I Have Something to Tell You, and Forgiveness. But which is very interesting is the presence of this guy who is very close to Rashid al-Ghannouchi. He was based on European countries. He moved from Germany and Russia and many countries. And for the first time, he was invited in this talk show in Saturday evening, and he confessed that he has 2 wives. And it is his right as a Muslim to have 2 wives and to have kids from both of them. And he said hello to both of his wives. And we were shocked to see this guy in a country who was considered as very respectable of women's rights, and women's rights were, let's say, we consider ourselves as a model for women in the region, etc. And nobody take a decision to ask this guy, what is your situation, legal situation? So, cultural interpretation of law. At the same time, witnesses new behavior of some groups breaking the law. Drivers on the street, they don't respect anymore red signs. Protesters violation of property and individual rights. A new phenomenon. Illegal or temporary marriage, more common in our universities. And it is very important to know how students conceive law. For them, one of our students confided to France 24, the law must be revised so it is no longer forbids what Allah allows. So for her, it is the application of God rules. Another student at our university also admitted that the new area greatly helped me make my choice, because now we can talk openly about this kind of subject that involves both religion and society. Some criminals recently released and who benefited from amnesties have become heroes, and we call them activists. And they create association for the protection of the revolution and using video and internet in order to encourage people to be rebel. One of them confessed that he will be the leader of war against security forces and the state. Those hors-la-loi have become stars, welcomed by some political leaders such the President of the Republic, Ghannouchi, Ayedi, Liver, and this is one of the famous hors-la-loi in Tunisia, and here you see that he was welcomed with his fellows, and here he's talking with Rachel Ghannouchi. The League for Protection of the Revolution had been accused of attacks on journalists, politicians, unions, and civil society organizations. Media provided us some elements to know how law is culturally constructed. Also by circulating images and discourses, it produces some radical reconfiguration of religion identity. Let's move now to see what is the role played by some preachers, not only in Tunisia, but coming from the Gulf, in order to introduce another interpretation of law. For example, here they break the rules and they come to our schools and even in our university in order to preach and to do their indoctrination of youth and to encourage them to not respect the secular state. And here the famous preachers, and they become very, very popular, and also Monsef al-Marzouqi, our president, received one of them in the palace and asked intellectuals to come and to attend conferences, etc. Preachers and some ulama become new actors. We are no more talking about intellectual, they become invisible, but in the opposition we have these new actors. Adel Almi, this preacher, founder of the Committee for the Promotion of Virtue and Prevention of Vice, what we have in Saudi Arabia. In fact, it's a religious police. And he confessed that the creation of religious police has become indispensable in Tunisia. The second guy is a political leader. He created his own political party, and he's claiming for the second wife and for female circumcision, and also for the system of slavery. You can have sexual intercourse with your homemade because she's a slave. And he got his permission, and he is very active in the society and welcomed in many TV programs, etc. And even he insulted each time secularists, and he was able even to give money to some deputies in order to defend his political views. Al-Alami Committee protested against the appointment of our colleague Amel Grami as the head of the Zaytuna religious radio station. In their first public appearance, Almi groups staged a demonstration opposite the radio station headquarters and demanded that she step down. The police have not made any arrests or initiated any investigation or persecution. It is important also to say that Tunisian law prohibits associations that rely in their main organization programs or activities on calls for violence, hatred, and intolerance and discrimination based on religion, sex, or region. The committee was legally authorized. Another preacher, Hussein Labidi, an imam of Zaytuna Mosque, the famous Zaytuna Mosque in the capital, kicked out the imam appointed by the Religious Affairs Ministry, took the association Al Khalduniya, and incited violence against the security forces. No investigation. And here some figures coming, preacher coming from Egypt, calling for the first time we heard this issue of female circumcision. And the second one coming from Saudi Arabia, from Bahrain, and this guy, he started to put one condition in order to help poor people in some region, giving money, but on the other side you should veil your daughter. And we started to see this new phenomenon of little girls putting veil. But I selected this photo to show you the same person. Here we can see the same member inside the Constituent Assembly. He's all the time inviting those pressure and calling to demonstration, calling for Sharia law. So he's belonging to a Nahda party, but he's from a group of very, very extremists. And that's why the idea that we are talking about moderate political party, it's not true. Because inside in Nahda party we have extremists who represent Salafists more than moderate party. Pressures played an important role to convince some groups that Sharia reflects the will of God. For believers, the law was considered God's law. Sharia law represents a religious ideal. Some of them approached the law as a set of religious duties. Secularists worried about the violation of human rights and the impunity. The Ministry of Interior was focusing more on regulating youth culture. And we started because the system is functioning, but they are functioning on one side. I mean secularist people. They are all the time targeted by police forces, etc., and punished. The same day, we have a group of graffiti, we have songers, etc., and on the other side, when it comes to traffic of guns, Salafist attacks, no investigation. At the same time, Tunisians discover another discourse about law, which is the activism of the Association of Judges. And this lady, she was the president of this association, and she received a threat of death. And thanks to her and the whole group, their activism, we started to understand that the independence of the system is very important in order to protect Tunisian rights, etc. And we started to understand for the first time that we have this new phenomenon of activism of judge, and also some member of judiciary system. And the debate on religion inside the Constituent Assembly. The process of drafting a new constitution reflected anxiety surrounding the place of Islam in the new political system. How Tunisians' Arab-Muslim identity should be expressed, the gender relationship, the role of law. And for the first time, Tunisians are asked to reflect more and more what is their identity. We never have this feeling that we should reflect on the issue of identity. But when Nahda party started to talk our Arab culture, Islamic culture, there is on the other side another discourse, which is we are Berber, we are from Roman heritage, we are from Phoenician heritage, and we are claiming for multiplicity of identity. We don't have one aspect of identity, but multiple aspects. And in the debate, the significance of different legal sources was one of the main issues of contention, particularly the question to which values should guide policy in the future. And of course, those issues were imposed by Ennahda party. Ennahda party or members frequently employ a majoritarian line of reasoning, claiming that their views are legitimate because they reflect those of most Tunisians, who, unlike the country, urbanized and secular elites, feel offended by insults to religion and public morality. And here, maybe you can remember the issue of Persepolis, the movie, the Iranian movie, and the issue also of Nadia Al-Fani, the filmmaker, when she presented her film and there were attacks from Salafist groups, etc. I will focus on some articles dealing with religion. And from this perspective, text and context. Article 1. The Constituent Assembly started drafting the Constitution in the midst of this atmosphere of fear, hate, tensions, confrontation, etc. And here it is very rich to seek this perspective of law, politics, and emotion, as I mentioned before. A new debate surrounding Article 1 of the first Constitution emerged. Article 1 states Tunisia is a free and sovereign state. Its language is Arabic, its religion is Islam, and its regime is the Republic. Ennahda expressed the will to change this article, declaring that Islam should be the main sources of legislation, with the goal of unifying all Tunisian legislation and the rule of Islamic law. Those representatives have also asserted on many occasions that Tunisian legislation and international treaties approved by the parliament should be in conformity with the Islamic law standards. Some members from Ennahda rejected a proposed initiative to abolish the death penalty on the grounds that such an initiative would violate Islamic law. They also offered a bill that would criminalize eating in public during the Islamic holy month of Ramadan. They also expressed their wish to abolish Law 27 of the first constitution, which allows for the adoption of child, since Ennahda leaders consider adoption of a child to be forbidden under Islamic law. In fact, since 2011 election, the Ennahda party has been met by vocal opposition by fundamentalist groups claiming for Islamic State. And here we will see that Ennahda party is under the pressure of both parties. We have in one side the extremists, Salafists, and before election they were a coalition between Ennahda and Salafists in order to gain votes. And after that we have the international pressure in order to write a constitution which reflects international codes and norms, etc. Those who accompanied for the Islamic State were also the radical wing of Ennahda, such as Habibluz Sadaq Shuru, a Salafist group who advocate an Islamic State governed by Sharia law. As Geertz noted, law is one way in which we make sense of the world, one way of organizing meaning, one distinctive manner of imagining the real. A number of associations and thousands of demonstrators gathered in 2011-12 together to urge the member of the Constituent Assembly to use Sharia, Islamic law, as the fundamental source of legislation for Tunisia constitution. And those two members, extremists, and you can see even for the solution, they reflect another vision of life. And for example, with the problem of many demonstrations in Tunisia and blocking the economy of the country, etc. For him, the solution is the application of the Sharia. We should cut the hand and the legs of protesters in order to provide some sector this opportunity to work and to save the economy of the country. And they are also the influencer leader from demonstration, and they are working side by side with Salafist groups. Among those Tunisian laws that conflict with some interpretation of Sharia are law punishing men who marry more than one wife. This law challenges the teaching of Allah and the Prophet Muhammad, as Islam allows for men to engage in polygamy. So the main issue for the group of Nahda party was the issue of polygamy, in fact. However, Salafist plan is not only limited to Tunisian domestic law. They suggested that international treaties that contradict Islamic teaching should be disagreed. We don't need these treaties. Protecting human rights is a part of Islam. We should withdraw from these international treaties that advocate gay rights, which I would rather call animal rights. The state that Ghannouchi envisions is a civil and democratic state, but it also needs to engage with religion in specific ways to organize it, but also to implement it. And how to implement it? We have at the same time the deputies, they are working inside the Constituent Assembly, but at the same time many organizations, associations of charity, but in fact they are under the control of Salafists coming from Gulf region, and we are receiving at the same time this pressure from Saudi Arabia and from Qatar. The call for Islamic law served to create the impression of dichotomy between the West and Islam and to impose the Islamic culture, a particular way of life. By claiming the implementation of Sharia law, marginalized groups used the rule of law as a way of being in the world and to be recognized. Representatives of Democratic Party react, in fact, against this vision of life and culture of law. They announced that the Nahda project was unacceptable because the party did not identify what school or interpretation of Islamic law and what is Sharia finally. We have many interpretation and definition of Sharia. They mobilized their party to participate in demonstration organized by civil society. The protest called for a modern democratic state which protects human rights. And here I should mention how we collaborate or cooperate with the member of Constituent Assembly. Each time they need clarification because most of them, they are Francophone, they don't have really read any book about Islamic law. So in this case, they called us each time and help us. What's the meaning of Sharia? What's the meaning of Thawabit al-Islam? What's the meaning and so on, so on. So that's why we provide them with information and useful and practical definition of and strategies also how to convince the other party that they understand really what is this issue of Sharia law. And it was a wonderful collaboration between scholars from one side, and we are a few of, and I don't know why, but this is the reality. Most of the women scholars who collaborate with the deputies were women. Only women move in this direction to help democratic deputies in this process. On March 26, Nahda announced that it would no longer press for this inclusion of this provision. We should stress here, this is my point of view, the role played by Ghannouchi, the leader of political party in Nahda, in this process of drafting the constitution. Each time that we have a crisis and we are fed up with this confrontation, suddenly appear Ghannouchi and let's move. There is no utility for this discussion and go to another aspect from this text. And here, according to me, law reflected also power relation, but the representation of the leader and the protector, the father. Finally, we received this constitution thanks to the role played by Ghannouchi. And for me, it is very interesting to analyze many speech of Ghannouchi, when we see that he's all the time focusing on the personality of Bourguiba, the first president of the Republic. And there is war against Bourguiba and the culture built by Bourguiba and values promoted by what we call the thought of Bourguiba. And there is a real problem. For me, it's from the background of psychology, we can understand that there is a rivalry, revenge, to take a revenge from this person, because at the same time, we witnessed on Facebook many faces of Facebook and on demonstration also the portrait of Bourguiba. And people are fighting, doing activism through the personality. What emerged is Bourguiba. When they compare the attitude of Ghannouchi, and they are all the time, look at your master, Bourguiba, was a great person, etc. So there is this role of protecting people and unifying all Tunisian and trying to be the father, the pattern of this. And even I wrote an article about who is the father of this constitution finally. Multiple persons are identifying themselves that they are behind this creation. Article 6. The second area of debate concerned the crime of blasphemy, the idea of criminalizing defamation of religion and holy religious figures. In both the Constitution and the Penal Code gained ground in June 2012, after the opening of an exhibition in Tunisia, and it was deemed offensive to Islamic. So each form of expression of artistic way of express is not anymore tolerated in Tunisia. And Nahda condemned this exhibit and in a statement urged the Constituent Assembly to add a provision to the penal code criminalizing blasphemy. That's why there is a relationship between event in the society, and it was reflected on the drafting of the constitution. In addition, the party proposed inserting a constitutional provision to prohibit blasphemy. The stated reason for such a proposal was to protect Tunisia's Islamic identity. Freedom of expression must adhere to Islamic values and pay appropriate respect to religion and religious figure. So from this moment, it is no more admitted that painters or music singers or etc. or theater etc. to express themselves only in values, in Islamic values or forms. In opposition, secular parties and civil society groups rejected both proposals submitted by Nahda. They considered the suggested provision to be new restriction of freedom of expression. Representatives of the secular party argued that it is difficult to define the sacred as a general term. As the Assembly considered Article 6, things changed radically on January 5. The evening before, a governing member of the Assembly from the Islamist party in Nahda, Luz, the famous extremist, attacked a member from the left verbally, accusing him of being an enemy of Islam. Since that moment, this member from Popular Front, Democratic Party, received a threat from extremists, threat to death. This word gave rise to a proposal by opposition representative who took the opportunity to introduce an amendment criminalizing accusation of apostasy, condemning that it would be bar incitement to hatred that had recently proliferated. The article was adopted the same day. For the second time, the proposed anti-blasphemy provision were dropped. Article 6 states the state is the guardian of religion. It guarantees liberty of conscience, which is new mention, and of belief, the free exercise of religion worship, and the neutrality of the mosques and the place of worship from all partisan instrumentalization. The state commits itself to the dissemination of the values of moderation and tolerance, and to the protection of the sacred and the prohibition of any offense thereto. It commits itself equally to the prohibition of and the fight against appeal to takfir, charges of apostasy and incitement to violence and hatred. And it is a complicated article, and we'll see why. According to Emna Galili, director of the Human Rights Watch Office for Tunisia and Algeria, Article 6 attends to impossible task of reconciling two radically different visions of society. One, of the one hand, it caters to hyper-religious audience that sees that the government as a watchdog and protector of all things sacred. At the same time, the article describes a society that leaves each person the freedom of religious choice without intrusion or interference. The two irreconcilable visions are forced together in a complicated and wordy fashion. Article 6 is really a threat to freedom of expression. It limits it, and because it fails to provide a clear definition of blasphemy and does not specify whether blasphemy is prohibited in all cases or only when it implies an incitement to violence. Freedom of expression has been repeatedly tested in Tunisia transition. Jaber Mejri was jailed for posting pictures of the Prophet Muhammad online, and the sentence 7 years and a half. In addition to Article 1, Islam is referenced in Article 74 of the Constitution, which stated that any presidential candidate must be a Muslim. And when we compare this mention and the Constitution of 1861, there is a big differences in formulation this week. Also, the Article 39 stated that the state shall work to embed youth in the Arab Islamic identity. They refuse this amendment that we have a multiple form of identity, and even Maghrebian or Mediterranean aspect of our identity. This debate confirms that the boundaries of the religion are redefined continually in this process. And finally, the debate on gender. This is the vice president of the president of the Constituent Assembly, and she's coming from Paris. She lived in Paris, and she's belonging to another party. I know this lady from 2006, and I was shocked because the form of dressing, the style changed radically when I met her for the first time in Tunisia in this Constituent Assembly. That's why I'm focusing on the style, confirm, and normative way of dressing. Since the first draft, feminist activists and women's rights groups reacted strongly to the language used in oral speech, because each time that we ask this lady, we ask her by using this word, Mr. the Vice President, or Mr. the Chair. And from this perspective of feminists, it is not tolerated because male is the norm. And as if she's not visible for the audience from her presence. And that's why they are calling for gendered language in law as text, but also as form of expression and interactivity inside the Constituent Assembly. And there was a long debate about why we should change this language. Because when we talk about Tunisian from this perspective, Tunisian, we can talk about women and men, but for the interpretation of some text, it is necessary to identify women and men. Why? Because we can change the whole text when we prove an argument that it is not, it concerns only men, not women. The behavior of some deputies showed that patriarchal attitudes and stereotypes remain dominant at the informal level of gender relations. Gender is present in the processes, practices, and ideologies, and distribution of power in the various sectors of social life. It was very important for activists to include the expression Tunisian women and Tunisian men in the new constitution instead of people or Tunisian, which could be interpreted as applying only to men. Activists were aware that they might be denied rights equal to men if the final language was vague. Their rights are no more taken for guaranteed. From this moment, this awareness that they are losing their rights, they started to be very vigilant with each issue. And here, this caricature, because one of the members of the constituent claimed it for the comeback of women at home and to play their real duty, to do their real duty, to wash or to clean the legs of her husband. This is her duty. And imagine when we started debating the law of parity and the equality and the issues concerning women's rights, we started to hear this discourse about people dreaming about this way of life. And this is a comment. Of course, he's very tight because he received a lot of money inside the Constituent Assembly, and he's very tight because he's working on the draft of Constitution. So he needed, in fact, some rest and women taking care about him, etc. Another representatives wanted to abolish Law 75 of 1998, which allows children born out of wedlock to be registered under their mother's last names. Those representatives from another argued that such legislation promotes adultery in an Islamic country. And this is the story of Islamic identity and Islamic norm, etc. each time. Also, they proposed a new constitutional provision, Article 28, suggesting that women have a complementary role to men in family life rather than being their equal. And here, it was, of course, a polemic because in the first constitution, women are equal to men. And this is a backlash, of course. In the response to such proposals, women's rights activists affiliated with secular movement and non-governmental organizations accused Islamic political parties of impeding women's rights that had been acquired since the country's independence. They also organized street protests against the proposed constitutional provision, claiming it would undermine gender equality. On the opposite side, the majority of women deputies from another party, in fact, they failed to build solidarity groups in order to defend women's rights. They are divided. We started to see the divide of groups inside the Constituent Assembly. On the contrary, they started to organize campaign against CEDAW, against parity law, etc. And they reject this gender policy because for them it is linked to the regime of Bourguiba, and they don't tolerate this heritage of Bourguiba, even if they benefit from this heritage, because the compulsory system of education make those women active and have this knowledge who permitted them to run for the election. And here the protest of women, and here, of course, the emotion of oldest people, and here activism, it's not it's not a way of expression of youth or women from middle age, etc. It started to be, let's say, a whole issue that pushes even our grandmother to go on street and to claim for justice for women. And at the same time, we started to witness some event, like four policemen raping women, and which is very strange, the position of the Ministry of Interior, because the ministry said that she's not a good girl, and why she's visiting this city at this time, etc. So the position of the government was very, shocked to the people. And here, aspect of women's mobilization, why this wave of protest and demonstration of women, it was a great event. Why? Because the accumulation of many events at the same moment. We have this phenomenon in our schools and this wave of imposing veil on little girls. And we have those pressure coming from many countries in order to convince people that they are not belonging to the correct or bad culture, correct culture of Islam. And we started to hear this discourse about good culture, Islamic culture, and bad behavior, etc. And we started to hear this member from another party inside the Constituent Assembly calling for segregation between women and men in public space. And the reaction of our Minister of Women's Affairs, she's from the political party of Marzouki, CPR, which is considered as a democratic party. She lived more than 20 years in Paris. She's a doctor, and her daughter are in private school. They learn English and French. And at the same time, when we asked her to take position concerning this violation of youth rights, etc., children rights, she told us that welcome to those pressures, and Tunisia is a land where multiple culture can cohabit, and this is way to move and to recognize that we have more than vision of our future. And people are free to choose what's norm of education to give to their, and that's why there is a demonstration when we take shoes in order to call to remove this Ministry of Women Affairs, because she's no more representing women. And following the controversy that was caused by the equality between men and women, the Article 28, which stated initially that women were complementary to men, was detected from the second draft constitution. And a general consensus has been reached on the principle of equality between men and women in rights and duties. It has been also agreed that women and men are equal before law, not in law, and enjoy equal opportunities. After a long debate, the Constituent Assembly passed Article 45, which states that the government not only protects women's rights, but supports their achievement and guarantees the equality of opportunity. Meaning that the Constitution won't change the Code of Statut Personnel. The main change article would bring it a concrete effort to ensure greater engagement of women in politics, particularly local politics. The article says that the state works to realize parity between women and men in elected councils, which means parity on the election list, even for regional election. Parity among the candidates had already been applied in 2011 election of the Constituent Assembly. Women's groups are not satisfied with Article 7. The family is the basic structure of society and the state shall protect it, because women are represented as mother and not as human beings. It could limit divorce right by valorizing the traditional notion of motherhood and family in Nahda wishes to change women's identity. Article 21 calls sacred the right to life, and here it is a field of interpretation. It could also be used to ban abortion. According to women activists, Tunisian law still discriminate against women on issues such as child custody and inheritance, and even the right of Tunisian women to have a husband from another religion is not tolerated, which is currently based on Islamic law. Despite the legislative power in Nahda now holds by controlling 41% of the seats in the Constituent Assembly, the party has so far failed in its attempt to implement a stronger role for Islamic law in either the constitution or the domestic legislation of Tunisia. This failure appears to be the result of fierce opposition from civil society and secular forces, not only in the Constituent Assembly itself, but also in the street of the country in the form of public protests. And even for Ghannouchi, he confessed that the Tunisian society is not yet prepared to Islamization. Wait and see. The assassination on July 25 of the left-wing politician Mohamed Brahmi in Tunis, the second political assassination in the country in 6 months, drew sharp public reaction, weakening the Islamists. Through the Assembly as a whole suspended work on the Constitution for 5 months, a commission of Assembly members set up by Nahda continued working, hammering Käte consensus language for disputed articles. It was partly the crisis in Egypt, including the overthrown last summer of the Islamist government of President Mohamed Morsi, Egypt's first elected leader, that prompted Nahda to make important concessions and seek consensus on the new Tunisian constitution. And finally, when we listen to declaration from political leaders, this constitution represents the whole society, all Tunisian. But in fact, after one day, from this constitution, we have demonstration on street in front of the Constituent Assembly from Islamists, Hizb ut-Tahrir, and many groups. We don't accept this constitution. It's a secular constitution. Some conclusions. Through media and language used by experts, Tunisians started to learn more about law, constitution, parity, freedom, and many other concepts. At the same time, they discovered a new language linked to culture heritage, basically Islamic law. For the first time, people, common people, started to hear Islam is the fundamental source of legislation, Thawabit al-Islam, provision of Islam on which there is a consensus, Islamic banking system, etc. The process of drafting the constitution reflected a dynamic of mutual influence, clashes, a culture of consensus, flexibility, the possibility of a middle ground. The process of creating the constitution shows an increasing citizen participation and a new social contract. But we have challenges. The text is sometimes ambiguous, and the next government will face the challenge of interpreting a complicated document. Qaisa Said, a popular constitutional law expert, finds that it is the idea of the constitution itself. Either you really want democracy or you are only justifying the legitimacy of those in power. The text reflects well the antagonism that shaped Tunisian society itself if compared to the 1959 post-independence constitution, which was closer to the elite's vision of society than the social reality. The new text also highlights Tunisia's current culture and legal contradiction. And this is the picture of Tunisia today. We have come and we are familiar of this photo. It reflects our representation of Tunisian before the revolution. And the second one, it reflects this anxiety of this problem of identity, who we are. And because we don't accept this way of wearing, youth are trying to resist in finding another way by highlighting our traditional way of wearing. This is the Sefseri, and Bourguiba was fighting this issue of covering the body. So at the same time, this is a new picture of youth in Tunisia who are fascinated by this new style of militarized masculinity. They are willing to be jihadists in Syria, and women from these parties, Islamist parties, who are offering their body to extremists in Syria. And at the middle, and thanks to I don't remember his, but he helped me to put this photo of Femen in the middle. It shows that this is Tunisia today. This form of expression of my body belongs to me, and I have the right to express also my resistance via my body. The real question for Tunisian society as they move forward on building an inclusive democratic governance model, which was and continues to be a driving force and clear mandate behind the 2011 revolution, is to understand and act the other internal and external factors hunting the society whose dissenters are manipulative in an attempt to hijack their original revolutionary mission. What the impact of law will be on the realization and meanings of justice, equality, security, and autonomy for Tunisians? This is the question. Thank you very much for your patience.